If you found $100 on the street, would you pick it up or keep walking? Of course you take the money. So why do you keep picking winners and not betting on them? That's why I go to MyBookie. It's fast, it's easy, and they pay you when you win. Let's face it, guys, where you're betting is just as important as who you're betting on. So do the smart thing this football season. If you're going to bet with MyBookie. Did you know you could bet on games after kickoff? If by the second half it looks like you're going to lose your bet, you can always just take the other side at MyBookie. Join now and MyBookie will double your first deposit. Use promo code Detroit100 to activate the offer. That's promo code DETROIT100. Visit mybookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid.
Fellas, I want to tell you about a product that can improve your performance in the bedroom. And what better way to improve the quality of your life than to please the woman of your dreams? Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know they work. Blue Chew is the fast and easy solution for any man looking to enhance their performance and step up their game. You don't have to be one of those guys that finishes quickly, or you don't have to be one of those guys that, at the end of the day, regrets not having a great sex life. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door in a discreet package, so no in-person doctor's visit, no waiting in the pharmacy, and best of all, no more awkwardness. They're made in the USA, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. Right now, we've got a special deal for our listeners. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment free when you use our special promo code DETROIT. All you got to do is pay the $5 shipping and handling fee. Again, that's BlueChew.com. Promo code Detroit to try it free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice, and we thank them for sponsoring the podcast.
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of Doc and Jock. I know you're going to want to listen to this one. Whenever Michigan and the Detroit Lions don't live up to expectations, you know Adam and myself, we're going to bring the noise. We got to break it down. This podcast, I can't wait to talk to my cousin, Adam the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
It's like the most depressing weekend ever. You ever just want to punch your TV and then maybe, I don't know, do a wrestling move like a suplex to it and then throw it out a window? That was me. Saturday and Sunday. It was just nothing but cuss words being yelled at the television.
Ooh, the second half of the podcast, we're going to break down Michigan's game versus Army, Michigan State's beatdown of Western, but we're going to start the podcast talking about the Detroit Lions. I mean, we've seen it all in the time we've podcasted. We've seen Hail Marys. We've seen the Lions go to San Diego, play well the first half, and then totally collapse. But something that in the 6 years and the 318 other podcasts we've done, something that we've never seen, cuz, a tie. What do you make of what the hell we just watched? The opening game, we're all excited, and you didn't win, you didn't lose, you tied.
This is the thing. And if you're a Lions fan, you know this. This team invents new ways to lose games. This is a brand new way for this team to lose a game. They had this game in the bag for the first three quarters. They were playing very, very well. It almost made you think, hey, this team might be better than what we're all thinking they're going to be. And then they showed you they were what we thought they were. This team gave this game away in the fourth quarter. They should have lost this game. Once Arizona cut the score to within 8, you're like, oh, this is great. Arizona's going to go down the field. They're going to score a touchdown. And then they scored the touchdown. And then you're like, cool, they're going to get this 2-point conversion. Then they got that 2-point conversion. And you're like, holy hell. it's all unraveling. This team's going to lose this game. And then you go into overtime, and thank God Matt Prater has a leg of steel. Like, for real, thank God that guy can kick field goals from around the moon. Because, honestly, if you just had any old Joe, if you just had a regular NFL kicker, you'd have lost that game. He's the reason that you are technically undefeated. When I say undefeated, I'm using finger quotes here. And it is a very bitter undefeated. This team is a complete embarrassment. The coaching staff and the veteran players on this team melted down and cost this organization this game. And we discussed it last week. This was a must-win game. At this point right now, you're looking at starting the season 0-5-1. You might not win another game for the next couple weeks. Let that sink in. You are going to be a bottom feeder. This was the worst team in the NFL last year. This was a rookie head coach, a guy who wasn't even very good in college. He ran a very impressive offense. His defense was absolute trash. This was a rookie quarterback who looked every bit of a rookie quarterback for the first 3 quarters of this game. And then you gave him a glimmer of hope, and he figured a few things out, and then he showed you what he could do. Your job as the Detroit Lions is not to get every rookie coach and every rookie quarterback up to speed on how to play in the NFL. But it sure as hell feels like it. Because whenever you play somebody like this, they just take the wooden paddle and take it right to your ass. The Lions blew this game.
No.
It was mental masturbation on the part of the head coaches. I have no idea why you don't. And trust is a key word here. And trust has been I've been in Detroit the last couple of days. My dad just had heart surgery. It was probably because of this damn Lions game. Because after this Lions game, he was rushed to the hospital. So I don't know. Honestly, absolutely horrible. But I've been in Detroit the last couple of days. And the key word that I kept hearing was trust. This coaching staff does not trust this quarterback. This is your franchise quarterback. You didn't bring in backups because you believe so much in this guy. You don't. Honestly, Josh Johnson is your backup. Who? Right. The one guy who's played on like 9 different teams over the last 7 years who's not very good, but he's good enough to beat out Tom Savage, who is a bum. You have no backups. You believe in your quarterback, but you don't believe in him enough. This coaching staff cost this team this game. Guys like Flowers cost this team this game. What are you doing getting your hands in a dude's face mask when you're near your red zone? What is going on here? This team continuously disappoints and figures out brand new ways to make this fan base hate them, can't stand them, and frustrated by them. The coaching staff, veteran players, I put this all on you. And thank God a guy like Snacks has the balls to come out and be like, you know what? On me. And it wasn't all on him. It wasn't. I just gave you Trey Flowers' situation where he cost this team a penalty and gave away a first down, which they ended up scoring on. It wasn't all Snacks, but Snacks has the balls to at least come out on social media and say, guys, I was dominated this entire game. And he was a guy that I said had to perform last week because David Johnson is one of the best running backs in the NFL. He's a top 5 running back no matter how you cut it. And he got bullied. That's a big man who just cashed a big check and caused a big stink this offseason to get that paycheck, and he got bullied.
How did you take in the game when the Detroit Lions had the lead? Because I had my notes. I was really excited. I saw, okay, the offense looked good. The defense was pressuring. They were batting balls down. They made Kyler Murray look the quarterback that he is, the undersized quarterback. But then, like any Lions fan, like anybody watching the Lions, my mind just kept going, what's going to happen? Is Stafford going to throw a pick 6 here? What's going to happen? Who's going to fumble? Well, it happened eventually. Jamal Agnew played his worst game in terms of being a punt returner, kick returner. He muffs the football, and it directly leads to points. So I knew something was coming. Did that happen for you? Do you just sit there going, okay, when's the other shoe going to drop? Because for me, I was noticing it. I'm like, man, I am so pessimistic. I am waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it did. So when it happened in the fourth quarter, when the collapse started to happen, I really wasn't even that surprised. I was just like, oh my God, it's happening again. The Lions are going to let the Cardinals off the hook. We are going to lose this game. And that's just the feeling you have. You can't even be mad because you come to expect it. But this was crazy, man. You had the game in hand. The Lions were dominating. Everything was working perfectly. You were utilizing a weapon. Hockenson looked unstoppable. Stafford was finding open receivers. All the guys got their touches. He showed love to Galladay, Amendola, TJ Hockenson. Jesse James got in the mix. Everybody was getting love. But at the end of the day, they don't leave Arizona with the victory. Were you like that, or were you kind of going, well, let me be cautiously optimistic when the Lions had the 18-point lead?
Going into halftime when they were up by 14, I was like, all right, they look good. At no point, though, did I believe that this was a cakewalk. At no point did I believe that this team was just going to walk out of Arizona with a win. One, it's Arizona. It's a house of horrors for this organization and for this team. Two, I don't think they were playing their best brand of football. Yeah, they were doing things well. Yeah, the offense looked like it was doing a couple things really, really good. But all that being said, I never really felt like this team had this game so locked up that it wasn't that they could just get out of here and have a double-digit win. It never felt like that to me. I mean, the inability to complete and execute on third down was a huge red flag for me. And that was part of the reason I wasn't buying in and I didn't feel like this game was secure. I mean, for the game, they went 6 of 18. But if you go back and you watch some of that first half, you watch some of that third quarter, there were times where it just felt like this team shot itself in the foot. You know, like it was a simple play, or it was a drop ball, or it was a bad play call. It felt like they left a lot of plays on the field, and because of that, I wasn't 100% sold. And then once you started to see the game slip away in the fourth quarter, you were like, oh, okay, cool. This is how it's going to end. It's I don't know. This is another one of those losses. And we've talked about a ton of losses. We've talked about balls getting batted out of end zones. We've talked about Hail Marys. We've talked about everything. You know, any way a team can lose, we've discussed it here on this podcast, on this show.
Yeah.
This is a brand new way to lose a game.
Well, they didn't lose. Let's reiterate. Let's be positive.
No.
They tied.
This feels like a loss. They lost this game. I know it's a tie. I know on the record sheet it's a tie, but they lost this game. You're lucky that you went up against such a decrepit team like the Arizona Cardinals that you were able to escape with that tie. This feels like a loss, though. You had this game in the bag, and then you blew it. You gave it away. And once it started to slip away, nobody on this team, not a coach, not a player, not an offensive player, not a defensive player, and definitely not anybody on those special teams, which didn't look very special, could pull this back together and help right this ship. The way this feels like a loss. And I don't think I'm out of line saying that.
Yeah.
I mean, am I?
No. It's a game where you have to have it based on your schedule. You were, by and large, the much better football team. That's why even Damon Snacks Harrison in the locker room said, it feels like a loss because we didn't put a point in the win column. And anytime you leave a football field and you don't get the victory, it feels like a loss. But we have to talk about it. The signature moment outside of the tie is the fact that the Lions have the ball and it's 3rd and 5. And everybody's gripping. Everybody's looking at it, and they're like, okay, this is a key play. It's 3rd down. You get the first down, and you're going to win. Game's over. And all of a sudden, the play clock is winding down, and Stafford hikes the ball, and he throws it to McKissick, a new guy on the team, a guy familiar with Darrell Bevel, and everyone's happy. Everyone's excited. They're like, yeah, it's 5 yards. He's running. It's over. We're all happy. We're like, okay, finally, the pressure's off. We can cheer. All of a sudden, there's confusion. The Arizona players are backing off. Something's gone on. What the hell's happened? And, the timing was perfect. McKissick's kind of slowing up a little bit, and he's already past the 10-yard line. He's already past the 10 yards, and everyone's confused, and we're wondering, like, what the hell happened? The Lions call timeout, and Patricia looks pissed. Stafford is livid, And everyone's like, no, this is not happening. This is another marquee visual moment of the Lions. They had the play. They had the game over. And an offensive coach gestures to the head coach to call a timeout. And the part that really pissed everybody off is afterwards, we see Stafford going, trust me. And we realize that he's the one looking at the play clock. He's the one that should make this call. And it so signifies the Lions in that you had the victory. It was done. You had the game. And your offensive coordinator, who's new, gestures to the head coach who has to call timeout, had the play taken place, the Lions win. And even after that play, okay, the next play, it's 3rd and 5 after the timeout, you draw up a play where you send 4 guys deep.
Deep, yes.
Everyone watching that film is like, what the hell? And he throws the ball, and it had no chance to earn the first down. So how did you take in that play? Because, I understand where people's frustrations are, and I mentioned it on a podcast. I just said the Lions are fearful of messing up so much. That's what Patricia said was we were scared to go from 3rd and 5 to 3rd and 10. But the variable that is being talked about and will be talked about in the next couple days, because I think Stafford's going to address the media sometime this week, is the fact that you needed to trust your quarterback of 11 years. You needed him to say, okay, you know what? Back to the F off. Patricia didn't really have to call timeout. He could have rolled the dice. He could have said, you know what? Stafford's there. He got the play off. That is so indicative of the Lions. Another visual moment, the timeout versus the Arizona game, a play that will live in infamy now for all Lions fans.
You know what's funny? If you go back through Lions history, you have so many different games where you just have a play, like the name of the play. So this will be called the timeout forever and a day. You'll be like, hey, you remember the timeout versus Arizona? Like everybody will know what you're talking about. Right. The Lions have a litany of these. It's like Santa Claus's naughty and nice list. It like wraps around the block. It's so damn long. But no, you're right. And the way you set that up, it really made me think. And I'm a guy who hammers Matt Stafford a lot of the time. There's a lot of times I don't feel like he does a good enough job. There are other times where I feel like he does a very good job. And I give him credit when he does a very good job. But usually I'm a little bit, because negativity sells in this market, right? So when I'm negative, I'm extremely negative about him. And we all know he doesn't really like me. There is if you go to my Twitter, Adam R. STROZ, you'll see the picture of Matt Stafford mean mugging me during last year's press conference. He just doesn't like me, and that's fine. I don't care. It's what it is. But he's a smart quarterback. He really is. He doesn't always make the best play, but he's a very smart quarterback, and he's been your quarterback for 11 years. And if your head coach doesn't have enough trust in him to do what is right, and he was doing the right thing, he was milking that clock for everything that it was worth, and he was going to get that ball off at the very last second, and then he executed supremely and put this team in the driver's seat and basically had them on their way to a victory that they needed to have. And yet your head coach doesn't trust him, and this is now going on his second year with him, and your brand new OC doesn't trust him. And I think the issue with the OC not trusting him, this goes back to Matt Stafford not playing any games in the preseason. I mean, he played the quarter and a half of the third game, which is fine. And I think we talked about this in the lead up, in the build up to the regular season. I think we were both on board with him either not playing or him playing very, very limited snaps. But when you have a brand new offensive coordinator, your offensive coordinator has to develop this relationship with your quarterback. And obviously there's going to be some growing pains here. Bevel did not trust Matt Stafford to get this play off. Matt Patricia did not trust Matt Stafford to get this play off. Everybody in that huddle sure as hell trusted him. And Matt Stafford did a great job doing it. He got it off. And yet the coaching staff lets this team down again. And it wasn't just this one play. This one play was indicative of what really turned the tide and really flipped the momentum for the Arizona Cardinals. But if you go back and you watch the way this team coached, the way this coaching staff coached these guys for 3 quarters, and how it switched over the course of that final quarter, you'll see this coaching staff let this team down. They started playing prevent. They started playing not to lose this game instead of playing to win this game. And you can't do that. I don't mind running the ball when you have a lead. That's smart football. That's good football. You've got a 14-point lead, run the ball. But you know what? You're going to execute and you're going to complete and get extra downs when you have put yourself in 3rd and short instead of 3rd and long. I think the Detroit Lions, for the first half, maybe the first 3 quarters, I think they're 3rd and whatever. I think it was something like 3rd and 5, which is much more manageable than what it was for the 4th quarter when it was 3rd and 9. So you're trying to pick up 9 yards so you can get extra downs, and it's just not going to happen. Not in the National Football League. It sure as hell isn't. Especially when you got a guy like Terrell Suggs who's making your left tackle look like a freaking turnstile. And let's talk about that offensive line, because that offensive line looked like absolute trash. Taylor Decker looked like absolute garbage. Probably had his worst game. He hasn't been the player that he was his rookie season in what? I don't know. He was injured most of last year. I want to say the last 10 games he's played, he's looked out of sorts. And that has to be a concern. It has to be a concern for Bob Quinn, has to be a concern for Matt Patricia, because he hasn't looked like that same player that you drafted him to be. That offensive line let this team down. We talked about how important the run game was going to be for this team, and you had issues rushing the ball. Kerryon Johnson rushed the ball 16 times and didn't even get 50 yards. That's a problem, guys. Yeah, as a team, you eclipsed 100 yards, but you sure as hell didn't look good doing it. There has to be questions here. I don't know what's going on with this offensive line that they've spent so much money and so much real estate in. I mean, let's go up and down this offensive line. You've got first round draft pick, you've got third round draft pick, you've got high priced free agent that you brought in here. I mean, you've got guys who have taken up a wealth of expenses from this team when this team tries to build and put itself together. And what are you getting back for it? Sure as hell doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I'm out of line here.
No, you're not. I think people that are observing this look at it and say, you know what? A lot of the pieces that you brought in made mistakes. I mean, Danny Amendola doesn't get out of bounds, right?
Dude,
frustrating.
Just to pick up 4 extra yards, and you end up costing this team just seconds on the clock. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. That was another big mistake.
Yes, and then even though you have an opportunity, to win the game, Arizona comes back. All you got to do is stop them on one play. They're able to execute the 2-point conversion. There were a lot of little mistakes that the Detroit Lions made, especially, when they had the lead. And unfortunately, that's what Matt Patricia has to learn. And look, if you follow us, and if you follow me at all, if you follow our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, in my video preview, I said, I know already the X's and O's are going to favor the Detroit Lions. They have the better coach. They have the better players. Specifically, I said in that video preview before the game started, what you got to look for is in critical moments, do the Lions succeed or do they choke? And in all of Lions history, in those critical moments when you need them to take that one play and make it, they don't. And eventually speaking, if Matt Patricia is going to be successful here, he's got to turn that around. In those key moments, you can't have Trey Flowers taking a penalty like that. In key moments, you can't have Danny Amendola not knowing to get out of bounds. At the end of the day, it's a culture. It's a problem. It's an organization that I feel like fears making mistakes, and they're trying to do everything so perfect and so regimented that sometimes they mess up the little things and the easy things. On 3rd and 2, your guy's back there, Tracy Walker, wrap the dude up. You had Kirk in your hands. You look at that play, when you see it, you're like, oh my God, it's 3rd and 2. You don't wrap him up all the way. You don't bring him down. Come hell or high water, you got to bring him down if you're going to win the football game. And with the Detroit Lions, there's nothing out of bounds when you look at it. Everybody's upset. The organization, the players, the coaches, they all feel defeated after a game like that because you outplayed them. You were the better team. You needed that win. I mean, because mathematically speaking, it makes it even harder after one game to make the playoffs when you have a tie on your record. So it's just by and large not good. And that's what's so frustrating. It's like, okay, Trey Flowers, what's he going to bring to the table? You barely heard his name. I was like, is Trey Flowers playing? And
right.
you got Danny Amendola makes that mistake, and everyone's saying, yeah, if he was a Patriot, he would have gotten out of bounds. And it's little stuff like that. And those that are really critical are saying, look, if Arizona was worth a damn, they pick off Matthew Stafford and they run into the house and they're dancing, they win the game. In overtime, Matthew Stafford makes really, if you look at it, a really bad throw, and he makes it right to the guy. If he has any hands at all, the Arizona defender, if he has any type of hands, he catches the ball and the game's over with the field goal, or he's so wide open he could dance into the end zone. But you got lucky to walk away from Arizona with the tie. And it negates a lot of the good stuff that we can talk about. I mean, you have a guy, a tight end that was drafted 8th that, freaked you and I out, but he sets an NFL record in terms of yardage. His first game, he looked like a stud. He looked like a weapon. He looked bigger than everybody else. He looked already as a rookie like the best player on the field. Stafford to Hawkinson is legit. You wasted that. He's not happy. He's not dancing. He's not feeling good this week. He's upset. He's frustrated. You had a bunch of defenders make great plays. Tracy Walker in the first half has an interception. Stafford throwing the ball all over the place. A lot of good things that were out there on the field were negated because of the tie. Was Hawkinson the MVP for you? Was he the positive that you can look to and say, okay, that's a building block?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. He was a pick that I wasn't high on. I was not. I think on our podcast I crushed that pick. And in the one post I did when I was working at DFN, when I did my redraft, I did like 3 redrafts. He was nowhere near the guy I was taking, and he showed you why he was worthy of that pick. He played exceptionally well. It was amazing to see that type of production from a tight end. Going into the draft, he was compared to Rob Gronkowski quite a bit, and that's high praise because Gronk has been one of the best tight ends that we've seen in history for quite some time now, and I think he was worthy of that praise. The big thing is that defense that Arizona has is I don't want to say it's average. It's average. I'm going to say it's average. I just talked myself into it. It's a very average defense. So how does he perform against a better defense? That's what I really want to see. What does he do come week 2? Because come week 2, he's going up against a Chargers defense that has a ton of flaws. And I feel like this should be a game for certain guys to really get off. I don't know if I expect the Lions to win this game, but what I do expect is certain players to have good games because of what I've seen from San Diego when they took on Indianapolis last week. Detroit should take advantage of that. If Detroit is worth anything, if Matt Patricia is worth anything, if Darren Bevel is worth anything, they need to put their guys in position to win games. I'm expecting that certain guys like Kerryon Johnson, TJ Hawkinson, Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, those guys should have really good games this week. If you're a fantasy owner, you own any of those guys, start them. I'm telling you, they should have good games this week. If they don't, I think we have to next week take a bigger look at this coaching staff.
This week is going to be very interesting to see how the Lions rebound after a tough tie. It's the home opener. A lot of fans are skeptical. They're not happy with what we've seen so far. So it's going to be crazy to see what's going to happen because I think the Boo Birds could come out real early if the offense stalls and they don't do well early on versus the Chargers. And the Chargers, they look good. They got the overtime victory. They're feeling good. Man, it feels like a must-win right away at home. Game 1, I'll be there covering it. It just feels like the Lions have to go out there and execute. And one area for me that I think has to improve outside of the offensive line, it's got to be the offensive play calling. I mean, look, first half is great, but you can't judge an entire game based on a half. In the second half, everybody's seen it. You went more towards a run-heavy offense, and that didn't work. You didn't get third downs. You gave Arizona a lot more possessions. It resulted in one of the keys to the game is that the Cardinals wore out the Lions defense because there were so many offensive plays ran, and you have to get first downs. You have to keep the pedal to the metal. And I think that, you know what? Eventually speaking, I've turned the page. Now, do I think it's going to work? No. You know, my stance is that if you put the ball in the hands of Stafford, eventually speaking, it's not going to work. But I have to say this, here and now, if you don't put the ball in the hands of Matthew Stafford and throw the ball a lot, it'll never work. You have less than a 0% chance. So it's time. Put the ball in Stafford's hands and say, hey, lead us. Stop with this notion that you're going to have this balanced attack and pass the ball in the second half when you have the lead. You know, if it has to be 5-yard passes to McKissick, if it has to be to Jones and Amendola, Jesse James, if you got to spread it all around, you can't make the same mistake you made in Arizona where in the first half you're zinging it all over the place, and in the second half you're trying to kill the clock with runs when your offensive line isn't doing much. So you have to, at the end of the day, when it's crunch time, trust Matthew Stafford and see what happens. Now, will it work? Probably not, but it's the only chance you have. I don't see it any other way. I mean, the Lions have Kerryon Johnson, and they're only going to rush it with him 16 times. That's what they're going to do. That's the plan. We can sit here and scream and yell and say, give him the ball more. He's the guy I say definitely could get the ball more if you had a decent offensive line, but you don't. You got problems. There's inconsistency. So at the end of the day, you're paying Matthew Stafford the next 2 years, ride him out, make him throw the ball 50 times a game, and if you can get a couple playoff wins out of it, then that's the best strategy. But the way in which the Lions collapsed in the second half with all those runs and conservative play calls on offense, that's just not going to work. It won't work. If you have a 14-point lead versus the Chargers, you got to act like it's a 14-point deficit and keep it going. Keep the offense in rhythm longer. I think it could happen versus the Chargers, but prepare, Lions fans, as you're listening to this, get your food ready, get your beer ready. That fourth quarter is going to be tight, back and forth. I see a real close game. It's anybody's ball game. It's 50-50. I don't know who's going to win this game. I don't know because at the end of the day, we can look at the stats, we can look at the numbers. We know that. Everybody here at the podcast has access to all the information. But at the end of the day, there's a variable that I don't know how we're going to call it, but it's the Lions. Something fucked up's going to happen that's going to derail the entire plan. How the Lions handle their mess up, how they handle being the Lions will dictate if they win this game. It's going to be close. I feel like last two possessions, last 2 minutes, you're going to want to lock in.
I think you're right. It's going to be a very close game. But here's the thing. Look at what Indianapolis did last week, right? They rushed, as a team, they rushed for over 200 yards, and they almost threw for over 200 yards, all right? You have to run the ball. You have to pound the rock. This is a game where Kerryon Johnson has to take this team on his back. You have to force feed him, all right? Marlon Mack, who's a better running back, Marlon Mack or Kerryon Johnson, in your estimation? Who do you think?
Ooh, I'll go Kerryon Johnson.
Okay, exactly, right? I think Kerryon Johnson's probably a more explosive running back. I think Marlon Mack has a little bit more experience because he's been in the league a little bit longer, but I think Kerryon Johnson's a much more explosive back and can give you a different look, especially catching the ball out of the backfield, all right? Marlon Mack ran for 174 yards last week. You have to feed Kerryon Johnson this week. On top of that, who's a better quarterback, Matt Stafford or Jacoby Brissett?
Matt Stafford.
Okay, my point, right? So let Matt Stafford run this offense and let him throw the ball around, all right? You have to take advantage of your possessions. You have to. This game sets up because the Chargers defense is a weak link for this team. You can take advantage of it. They have key injuries. You need to target that, focus on that, and do your damnedest to put points up on the board. And I think this game sets up for guys like Matt Stafford and for Kerryon Johnson to really take advantage of it. They have to. You've got to run the ball this week because your run is going to set up your pass. And if you're Matt Stafford, when you get time in the pocket, you've got to connect with your wide receivers downfield. You have to. It's the only way you're going to come away with a win here. I think you're right. It's going to be a close game. It'll probably be within a score, maybe two. I think it's going to come down to the final two possessions. I don't think the Lions win this game just because I think the Chargers have a much better offense.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be very, very close.
Yeah, and as you were talking, here's what I think. You know, when you're there, and you were there, you and I both have now been around the Detroit Lions. It's so regimented. It's almost like paralysis by analysis. And it's just, there's so much to pay attention to that sometimes we forget it's just a game of football, that you had the lead. All you have to do is keep running your offense, keep running screens, keep executing. Don't assume that the game is over. And sometimes the Lions, they have, like protocols. Okay, now we're in 18-point win mode, so we got to be really cautious. We got to scale back a little bit, go into prevent mode. Now, yes, you can argue it wasn't prevent, but you can watch the tape, guys. It's there. The corners in the first half were a little bit more up on the receivers. And, I love how like narrative and stuff gets spun, where they say, "Oh no, we just didn't execute," and Fitzgerald made a bunch more big plays. Yeah, he was able to make more big plays because he could run free because there was no one checking him.
He's got a 10-yard cushion. Of course, the guy can. He's a Hall of Fame wide receiver.
Exactly, and so the defense got tired, and that's concerning. And I look at it and I say the Lions this year, cause they have the pieces to win 8 games.
Let me ask you this:
it's just getting out of their own way. Just getting out of their own way.
Let me ask you this, because you say the defense got tired, right? Especially in that fourth quarter, you could tell a difference. Did they get tired because the offense changed? The offense, like I said before, put them in bad spots trying to complete on third downs, right? So you go from a 3rd and 5, which is much more manageable than a 3rd and 9. I'm going to say this. You're going to complete a 3rd and 5 many more times than you'll complete a 3rd and 9 and get an extra set of downs.
Exactly.
There were too many 3 and outs. And I think that offense really hamstrung that defense. And the reason they were tired and the reason they couldn't get out of their own way was because that offense changed their play calling and changed their philosophy for that fourth quarter.
Yeah,
and that cost the team.
Yeah, you were not in good position in terms of third downs. You just weren't at 3rd and 3s too many times. It was really brutal. It was a lot of mistakes, and the play, and that's what, if you read around, that's what Darrell Bevell, sometimes the biggest criticism of him is that, at times he gets way too conservative, and that's what happened. And I think the Lions will learn from this. Hopefully it's used as motivation. Obviously, there are times when everybody thinks that they're going to lose, and they'll play well. I think for longer stretches of time, the Lions should play well. And it could be a coming out party. I mean, T.J. Hockenson will be playing at home. Jelani Tavai will have an opportunity for some more reps in meaningful games. So, by and large, okay, now you're a 3-quarter team. Can you finish? Can you finish the game effectively and stop with this notion of bend, don't break? So it wasn't prevent, but it was bend, don't break, meaning the philosophy is just don't give up the big chunk play early. So you give up 4-yard plays, and things like that. But when you're tired and you're not playing as much pressure, Kyler Murray had all day to throw in the fourth quarter. He became an NFL quarterback just like that. And you recognize that that's not a good strategy, because when the Lions were up 8, they tightened up. They made it a lot more difficult, and I think that was the strategy at the point when Patricia realized, okay, we're tired. We can give them that first touchdown. Maybe we can clamp down and make a play. But at the end of the day, it's at the end of the day, cuz, and I'll say it again, 2-3 plays will dictate how the Lions perform, and a lot of times those 2-3 plays don't go right, and they don't go right in epic fashion. A timeout you call when you don't need to, a 3rd and 2 when you stop them. It's just a collection of errors that we all see all the time. But again, it was a tie. A real good opportunity to get back on track this week versus the Chargers. Again, it's a must-win. They have to win. And my 3 key players are going to be Taylor Decker, Kerryon Johnson, and Darius Slay. I think that Taylor Decker has to rebound. He has to do a lot better job of pass protection. He was decent when you look at it on film in terms of run blocking. It's just when it was time to protect Matthew Stafford, he got blew up a lot. And Darius Slay, I think he's a guy that can emerge as a leader. I think that he can definitely shadow a lot of the receivers. He can do his thing and disrupt things that the Chargers are going to try to do. Again, Kerryon Johnson has to be fed the ball more. I think if he can be used in the screen game, if he can get a little bit more touches than C.J. Anderson, then we're going to be in a much better spot.
Yeah, I think Kerryon Johnson is a key to this. You have to feed him. He's my number one guy, right? He's got to get the touches. If that offensive line is doing a bad job opening holes, you're going to have to utilize Kerryon Johnson in the pass, use that screen game, just get him the ball so he can get out in space and pick up chunk yards. My next key player it's a unit. It's going to be that defensive front. That defensive front has to do a better job this game. They've got to put pressure on Phillip Rivers. They've got to contain Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler had 3 touchdowns last week. So you have to do a better job containing him. You've got to do a better job of making Phillip Rivers' life just an absolute nightmare. If you have a rookie head coach or you have a rookie quarterback who was able to do what he did to you last week, imagine what Phillip Rivers is going to do to you. Phillip Rivers is a surgical knife. He's going to come in and just cut you to pieces. You can't allow that, and that all starts with the defensive front. And lastly, again, it's another unit. It's the head coaches, and it's the offensive coordinators, and it's the defensive coordinators. Your coaching staff can't cost you games. You're not a good enough team to where your coaching staff can put you behind the 8 ball and cause you to have deficiencies. You're not a good enough team at this point. I don't know if you'll ever be a good enough team, but your head coach cannot cost you a game. Your offensive coordinator cannot cost you a game, and your defensive coordinator cannot cost you a game. And those are my 3 key players / units.
I love talking football with Adam. Great stuff there. Oh, man, we could talk for another 4 hours about the Lions.
We could.
Oh, good stuff. But we got to show love to the sponsors because they help keep the lights on, the microphones hot here in our Sterling Heights studio. 2 great sponsors, the Motor City Pawnbrokers and Flick, a great chat application. The Motor City Pawnbrokers are the one-stop pawn shop when you're in need of short-term cash or are looking for quality, brand name new, and pre-owned merchandise with locations in Detroit, Ferndale, Roseville, and Warren. Their mission is to deliver exceptional value. Today, go visit MotorCityPawnbrokers.com to learn about all the great deals, all the happenings at a great sponsor, the Motor City Pawnbrokers. If you agree or disagree with anything that we've said, if you're like, guys, you're overreacting, it's only game 1, it was a tie, there's so many good things to look at, head on over to the Flick chat application. It's Detroit Sports' newest headquarters. Why do we love Flick? Man, it's a large group chat application where we can share feelings, we can watch games together, we can, rant and rave when we see that timeout. It's really easy to use. All you got to do is head on over to your favorite app store and download Flick Chat, and then you're in the Detroit Sports headquarters. Or you can find it via our social media platform at Detroit Podcast. We constantly send out invite links. Press the button, and you're in, and you can chat with other Detroit sports fans as we watch the Lions together. Share the misery. Don't be alone. It's not fair to suffer as a Lions fan by yourself. Head on over to Flick, a great sponsor of the network. All right, cuz, going from one situation to another. I mean, you start your weekend, you're excited, you're like, all right, it's going to be Michigan Army. Now, I'm going to sit here and take a little bit of credit because you're like, damn, John, you gave Army a lot of credit. What's going on? You love Army. You think Army's great. Well, one, I did watch him, and I did watch him score 70. Look, when a team scores 70, you pay attention and go, okay, maybe they can do some things. But was I aware that they ran the triple option 90% of the time and just ran the ball? No. But I was like, man, guys, if you're a Michigan supporter and you see that game and you take it in and you realize, wow, we almost got beat in 2019 by a team that's one-dimensional and can only run the ball. If Army could pass, if they could execute a forward pass in 2019, and let's talk about that, it's Army. How can you not pass in 2019? There should be like 5,000 passing coaches. There should be 1 million of them out there to teach you, your quarterback, how to throw the ball forward. I mean, they didn't call a passing play for well into the game. And Michigan struggled so much. It was really bad to watch Michigan struggle so much to execute. You're just like every other Michigan supporter that's watching that, you're like, 5th year, Harbaugh's guys, quality coaches, that is what you put on tape? Man, you guys got lucky to escape Army. Now, listen, I give credit to Army. I knew they were going to play good. At the end of the day, you got to have a kicker. You got to have somebody that, can kick it 55 yards. Come hell or high water. It's, if you're an NFL team and you're a college team, you got to find somebody. You got to give the scholarships. You got to slip them the $100 handshake. Wherever you got to go find somebody that when you need a kick, 55 yards. Now, when it was happening, I thought for like maybe a second he could make it. But when they said it was his first kick, We all knew. It was like, oh, I should have tweeted. I'm like, this guy's going to choke. He's got no chance. But Army was one kick away from shocking the world. Man, cuz, I think you're upset, right?
Yeah, I was pissed. Thought it was an awful game. As a Michigan fan, I thought it was absolute trash. Mind you, Army attempted to throw the ball 5 times. They completed 2 of those. Like, that's embarrassing. And one of those passes was an interception. Absolutely abysmal. This team got ran all over. This was brutal. And it wasn't just one side of the ball. It wasn't just the defense that was embarrassing. The offense was embarrassing. I think at this point, we have to start questioning whether or not Shea Patterson is the quarterback for this team. Is Shea Patterson the guy? Because 2 weeks in a row, he has had issues with ball security. He has had issues with handling the ball. He has put the bean on the floor, and it's cost this team. And honestly, I don't know what he's giving you. I mean, I thought this team was special. I said this team was going to be special. I don't think this team's very special right now. I don't. I think this is going to be another one of those years where, as a Michigan fan, you're going to have your heart ripped out probably later in the season. You know, it might even happen this weekend. I don't know if this team has enough to do what we all expected them to do.
Well, first and foremost, do you buy into some of the news now that maybe Shea Patterson has an issue with his oblique? I mean, Steve Dace doesn't buy it at all, in that he's observed tape. They ran plays, running plays for Shea, and it didn't look like he was injured. But there is a little bit of a narrative that maybe Shea's performance was not where it needed to be because he was hurt.
No, it sounds like that BS Michigan narrative where they're trying to cover for their guy, and that's all it is. If he's hurt, believe me, you've got a very good backup in Dylan McCaffrey sitting right there. Why don't you put him in? Why don't you play him? Let Shea rest up then. If he's your number one guy, if he's your dude, and if he's hurt, and it's going to cost your team, because honestly, if he's hurt, it's costing your team right now. You know, he doesn't look very good out there. He doesn't look very productive. And the issues I have with Shea Patterson, it's not even so much the physical. It's a lot of mental stuff. You know, week 1, it was the read option plays, right? It was his decision making on those. Does he stick the ball in the chest of the running back, or does he pull it back? Because that was where the issue was. The issue was at the mesh point where he has to decide on what he's going to do. He seemed hesitant. Seemed like he wasn't sure what he wanted to do. So that's a mental error. That's not a physical error. That's all mental. This last week, he just fumbled the ball. He fumbled the ball twice. You know, one of those, his left tackle blew up, right? And the guy got around and swatted the ball away. That's not necessarily your fault, but you as a quarterback have to be able to feel that pressure. You have to know it's coming. And if it's coming, you've got to either A, tuck the ball and run, or B, get rid of the ball to live to fight another down. And he's just, he looks out of sorts. He looks uncomfortable in this offense right now. And he's supposed to be the guy. He doesn't really feel like the guy to me. He really doesn't. He had a decent season last year. You thought you could maybe build on it. You thought you could bring in a offensive coordinator who could come in here and do something that could really accentuate what Shea Patterson does. And it really hasn't worked out through 2 games. You're now going to go and play a Wisconsin team who looks really, really good. Really, really, really good.
But you have an opportunity. I know you said you could be disappointed this weekend. Actually, Michigan's off this weekend. They got a bye week. So you get an opportunity for an extra week to rest up, get things right, maybe get healthy, and to take on a Wisconsin team. But a lot of people are looking at that contest going, oh boy, if Michigan doesn't step up, there's an opportunity for a loss. So it feels like, in terms of the program, it just doesn't feel like progress in regards to what Jim Harbaugh's doing. Have you now started to sour on the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines?
Yeah. Yeah. Simple answer, yes. Honestly, at this point, it just feels like more of the same. You know, if you're a Michigan fan, you can't tell me that this doesn't feel like more of the same. This is the same problem that Michigan State fans were having last week. It's just more. It's more crap. It's Army. Army plays a tough brand of football. Army's games tend to be close. They can hang a bunch of points. Dude, they travel to your house. and you got lucky. Like the word is escaped with a victory is what is used to describe what happened on Saturday. Like, yeah, this feels like more of the same. In our Flick Chat app, I was begging for Uncle Urban to come out of the Fox studio and come and teach Jim Harbaugh how to coach big games or coach close games or just, you know what, take over the program. I don't care.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a controversial question. It's something that you
don't worry, I'll give you a controversial answer.
Yeah, and it's something
because I don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah, it's time. I mean, literally. Okay, we can have all the talk about the X's and O's and can Michigan rebound and are they going to get to Indy and things like that. But is it time, if Harbaugh's not the guy, do you lob the phone call to Urban Meyer and say, it's yours? Do what you got to do. Be the guy that will bring us to relevance. Would Urban Meyer even ever entertain the thought of coaching Michigan? Is it time to bring in the guy, to bring in Nick Saban? Is it time to bring in one of the top 2 coaches in all of college football? Would you entertain that? And would it even be a possibility if you said, okay, we've paid Harbaugh $7, $8, $9 million a year, fine, things like that. Would you then say it's not going to work? If this season it stays the same and next season stays the same, we're talking about the same thing, would you lob a call and say, okay, Urban, $12 million, 10-year deal, $125 million, it's yours, do what you do, and bring us back to where we actually can be? Would you ever entertain that? And would he ever entertain that? I feel like dollars can override loyalty, and that would be something, but I don't see it happening. But I think at the end of the day, we can talk specifically about Urban Meyer, or we can talk specifically, I don't know if Michigan has their nationally elite head coach.
I think it is time. And yeah, at this point, I would entertain it. Here's the thing, though. I don't think Urban Meyer will ever come to Michigan. I think for him, it was one of those things where he either wanted to coach at Michigan or at Ohio State. Ohio State jumped on it first. They took him. I don't think he'll ever coach at Michigan. I just think it's one of those things. But yeah, I would call him. I would offer him everything underneath the sun. I don't think Nick Saban will ever come here either. I just feel like he's got everything he needs in Alabama. He'll never come here. But yes, at this point, I think it's safe to say there's this upper level of coaches, right? And there's only a few guys in that category. And Nick Saban and Urban Meyer are guys in that category. Jim Harbaugh is not in that category. He's either a tier or a tier below that. You know, it's one of those things where he's just not good enough. And I don't know why he's not good enough. I mean, this is a guy who was able to get the 49ers to the freaking Super Bowl. And yet here in college at his alma mater in big games or in close games, you see all of his warts. You see all of his foibles.
But I'll say this, though. I'll say this. Michigan did win. They are sitting at 2-0. They still have all their goals ahead of them, but it doesn't feel like the momentum. No, it doesn't feel like momentum's on their side.
Go back and watch that game. That was an ugly game. It was a disappointing game. If you're a Michigan fan, you weren't happy with how that played out. Yeah, you're happy you got the victory. Yeah, you're happy you're 2-0. Because if you were 1-1, honestly, it would feel like the world is crumbling. But it just feels like going into the season, you thought this team was poised to do something, or you felt like this team had the capability to be poised to do something. And right now, it doesn't feel like that at all.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It doesn't. And you're right. Michigan's going to play Wisconsin, not this week, next week. But I don't know if you've watched any Wisconsin games. I don't know how much you've paid attention to Wisconsin. Real quick preview. They're pretty good, and their running back is a train, and he's going to bulldoze that Michigan D-line unless they come with something special.
And the defense of Wisconsin could make it a long day for Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so we'll see what happens. We're gonna keep an eye on that story. Michigan has a lot of work to do. Hopefully, they use the bye week. I think it did come at the right time. They did escape. And Army.
Here's a question for you. Here's a question for you. After the bye week, do we see a shakeup at quarterback? I mean,
no, I don't think so.
This is the prime time. If you're going to do it, this is the prime time to do it. You give McCaffrey a whole week to take reps, to learn what he's got to learn, and then you got a whole week to prepare for Wisconsin. Does the bye week come at the perfect time to make a quarterback switch?
I don't think to start the game, but if he struggles, if the offense stagnates, he'll be out there. He'll be out there, no doubt.
If you're Jim Harbaugh, are you doing 50-50 reps then?
No.
Are you keeping Patterson on a short leash?
Yeah, Patterson's on a short leash. Yeah,
but
Patterson.
So during practice then, are you keeping it 80-20 like it normally is, or are you adjusting it a little bit?
I think that if you actually want to dial up and use Dylan McCaffrey, you don't do it when he's cold on second down and have him throw a pass. I mean, you might want to put him in a better spot to succeed. You know,
for sure.
So I think Patterson's on a short leash, but I do think that he gives the offense the best chance to succeed. It just looks like Dylan McCaffrey just needs a little bit more opportunity. Maybe you give him more reps in practice, but I see if Michigan's going to succeed versus Wisconsin, they're going to need Shea Patterson. They're going to need everything that he brings to the table. They're going to need to execute. No doubt.
I wouldn't be opposed to them making the switch this week.
Okay.
Patterson has given me zero confidence in his ability to do what is needed.
All right, with our remaining few minutes here, it was nice to see Michigan State throw down the gauntlet and destroy Western Michigan. Now, it's Western Michigan, so I can't take away a lot of excitement because obviously Western is not, renowned in football. But I'll say this, something happened earlier in the week prior to the game that was a good sign, and that was Mark D'Antonio challenging his team. He went out there and publicly said, look, this is Michigan State football. If you're going to have an effort like that, that's substandard. That's not acceptable. I'm questioning your toughness. I've watched the film, and I've seen plays where you guys quit, and that's not acceptable. That's not anywhere near what will succeed here at Michigan State. And he threw down a challenge, and I think it was done at the right time. Michigan State responded. That offense looked good, and, okay, I'll put it this way. Mark D'Antonio has the overall scheme defensively that is world-class. Offensively, he has opportunities for success, but he needs the right players. He needs that stud running back to emerge. He needs that quarterback that's going to be able to run the offense. He's going to need a lot of talent to do what he needs to do. And so that's why a lot of people are kind of clamoring for a system that you can maybe take lesser talented people and have them have success. But maybe, just maybe, the Spartans have hit a home run and found their running back. Elijah Collins, when you watch him on film, he played really well. He showed explosiveness. He showed speed, and it really helped that offense to kick off. So I was impressed with him. I was impressed with Lewerke. The offense looked good. So when you ask, is that the real version of the Michigan State offense? Yeah, when you're playing Western. But I think when you want to open it up a little bit more, I think that you got to have a solid play on the offensive line. You got to have that running game kickoff. And I think maybe you might have found some pieces that can help you execute your goals.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what you're going to get every week, right? I think that offense looked really, really good against a MAC school, which is awesome. Which, if you're a Michigan fan, I think that's going to give you hope because that means you should be able to gobble up at least the middle of the pack to lesser teams in the Big Ten. I'm going to be curious to see what this team will do against, a Wisconsin who looks really good right now, against an Ohio State who looks really good right now. I don't put Michigan in a category where they're going to challenge Michigan State right now because I just don't feel like they've looked very, very good. So going into that Michigan State game that's later on down the pike here, I think in November, I have Michigan State winning that right now. Now things will change and things can change, but at this moment in time, I think Michigan State's offense and Michigan State's defense looks really, really, really good. You're right. I don't know if this is the real version. I just think it's going to look something similar when they play better caliber teams. It'll be interesting to see what happens when you play a Penn State, just a team that's a little bit more of an upper echelon team. But yeah, I think this was great because it showed that Mark D'Antonio has control and knows how to motivate his guys. His guys took last week off and he said, that's not good enough. You can't do that. I want more. There's more that I can get out of you, and there's more that you have to show me. And you know what? They responded. And I think that's awesome. I think that's great. I don't know if Jim Harbaugh has ever called his guys out and they've ever responded in that same way. I don't know if you can make that comparison because I don't know if it's ever happened. And if it has, please, somebody tweet me. Let me know when it's happened. Let me know. Because I don't know.
So versus Arizona State, I see more of the same. I see a tough game, but Michigan State's going to want revenge, and they're going to handle their business. They're going to have a balanced offense, a balanced defensive attack, and as long as they execute, I'm very happy with what's going on at Michigan State. It's nice to see at least a positive storyline and to see Elijah Collins emerge, maybe even to own that job.
Yeah, you know what? Going into this game last year was a bugaboo. This was a game that they should have won, that they ended up losing. I think Lewerke being injured. This is kind of where the wheels, I think, started to fall off a little bit for Michigan State. I think that was, week 2 of their season. I think you have an offense that has a little bit of confidence after last week. I think you have a defense that is much meaner and much more aggressive than it was last year. You don't have a Kahil Harry on this offense for Arizona State. He was a game changer last year. He opened a lot of eyes with his play against Michigan State last season. You don't have him this year. This is a game I think Michigan State wins. Arizona State is traveling to Michigan State. I think that helps as well. I don't see a reason why they lose this game. I think Michigan State is 3-0. I don't think Arizona State has enough.
Great podcast recording. That hour just flew by. Love talking football with Adam. To end the podcast, we're going to play an epic voicemail. A supporter of the Lions, potentially could be Lions free. I'll play that for you guys. If anytime you want to leave a voicemail, it's open. 248-579-8686. That's 248-579-8686. Keep it to around 90 seconds, and you can say whatever you want. Thanks, cuz. You can follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSCROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. I cannot wait to recap all the week's news on next week's podcast. Thanks, Adam.
Absolutely. This is great.
Hey, guys, it's Buddy. Had to check in on a lovely, hilarious Monday listening to all these boneheads call into the sports talk angry about the Lions. Think about it. All these fans are angry about what happened with the Lions. You clowns, they've been doing this for 50 years, and you have the balls to call up and be upset, blame Stafford, blame the team. Blaming the Lions for getting you upset is like blaming a $5 hooker for giving you herpes. What did you expect? So from here on out, NHL is right around the corner. I'm all NHL, all Michigan, all college. That's it. No more NFL. If you guys need to get a hold of me on Sundays, I'll be at the beach, at the park, Universal, Busch Gardens, somewhere with a smile on my face. No more Lions rest of the year. Keep up the great work. Love you guys. Love the show. Talk to you soon. Go Blue.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.